Pledge. Call the meeting to order and start the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So the first announcement tonight is a public hearing to consider a local law amending the zoning code to provide for the expiration of limited site development plan approval and to correct the notice provision of section 2224-98 on Monday, March 21st, 2016 at 7 p.m. at Village Hall. Do you want to give a quick overview of that, Mary Ann?
Yeah, this is just two omissions that I noticed in the code. One is, right now, there is a limitation on site plan approval. If you don't get your certificate of occupancy within 3 years, the site plan approval lapses. This would say that if you get limited site development plan approval, and that happens sometimes when there's a subdivision, and then they're not ready to go forward with the building shed, so they get limited site plan approval. This is roughly what it would look like. But it says unless you apply for building permit within 3 years, it expires. We have occasionally had people coming with really old limited site development plan approval. As you know, only we had one that came in, it was a 30-year-old site plan approval. We had nothing in court over that one, and did win, but it's not always that obvious. And then the other one, this is just, I happen to notice that when somebody asked me about the notice, the language is missing from the zoning board of procedures section. It says the applicant shall be required to notify any property owners of the application, but it doesn't say which property owners. There's the property owners within 200 feet of the subject property, which is what's been being applied, but it just doesn't say it. It says it in the site plan section, but not the zoning section. So those two corrections. They're just really corrections. So actually, well, this actually the expiration of the site plan approval is a correction. I mean, it's a change. The other one's just a correction.
Okay, that's Monday. I'll make a motion for the public hearing on Monday, March 21st. Got a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The only other announcement I have is this Sunday, March 13th, is the Sleepy Hollow St. Patrick's Day Parade. If anyone in the audience would like to march, it's we just have fun. We march to the village. You don't have to be an elected official. You just have to. You don't have to be a resident. If you want to come march behind our banner, we'd love to have you. You don't have to be Irish.
You have to be Irish.
You don't have to be Irish. As long as you're not English. No, it's anybody's. It's actually a very fun parade. We usually get a crew of about 15 or 20 of us. They're usually my friends from like Larchmont and Yonkers, so it's kind of a strange bunch, but we'd love to have anybody here that would like to come march, so you're all welcome. Anybody else have announcements? If not, we'll move on to correspondence. First one is from Michael Hanna. Dear Brian Smith, Constance Keogh, Mark Gilliland, Christina Gilberti, and Janice Silverberg. The arts are alive in the village of Irvington. I'm just leaving a packed house for the Amy Helm concert at the Irvington Town Hall Theater. Along with her band, the Handsome Strangers, Helm rocked the house. Thanks are due to Carter Smith and the Common Ground Community Concert Series for another successful show. Introducing the band, Carter asked how many were at the theater for the first time, and nearly half raised a hand. What a boon for our community. On this warm winter night, every Irvington restaurant was hopping, including Mima, La Chinita Poblana, River City Grill, Red Hat on the River, Chutney Marsala, and Wolfert's Roost. On the heels of last week's near-capacity All Shorts Irvington Film Festival, credit is also due to theater manager Greg Allen, theater commissioner head Jody Hansen, festival chair Laura Chalk, and the many wonderful staff and volunteers working hard to bring new, well-received events to our theater. We can look forward to the not-to-be-missed Clock Tower Players Inc. staging of American Idiot. Started this weekend. I saw it. It was fantastic. Featuring the musical talents of The Stories next month. When then Broadway Training Center presents Urinetown. Lest I forget, it should be mentioned that the recent Irvington Spelling Bee was also a hit, raising money for the Irvington Public Library and the attention to the Slow Down Irvington campaign. Finally, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your own fundraising effort for the Irvington Town Hall Theater in December, featuring U2 and Johnny Cash cover bands. On any given evening, there's delicious dining and top-flight entertainment to be found in Irvington. My many thanks to everyone for their efforts. Irvington is the place to be. I will say the night of my show as well, I would say about 2/3 of people had never even been in a theater before, and many of them had lived in Irvington for a long time. So a lot of exciting stuff is happening under Glenn Allen, our new theater director, and it's been great. I would give a plug for American Idiot. It was really, really good. I'd seen it on Broadway. I would say the band was just as good, and I'd say 9 out of the 10 singers were Broadway quality, so let's figure out who the 10th is, maybe there you go. I'm an honest critic, but it was fun. It's this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I believe, but it might just be Friday, Saturday, so don't wait till Sunday. Next is from Jeff Reich and Bill Thompson. Dear Board of Trustees, we are going to request a change of zoning for our Stanford building, Bridge building at 50 South Buckout Street. Eileen Fisher's Green Eileen project is interested in moving into a 21,000 square foot space currently occupied by Malia Sciences. The use of the space would include about 7,000 square feet for reassembly of recycled fabrics into new clothing and furnishings. There'll be no manufacturing of raw materials on site. The fabrics and materials will be delivered and removed from our building in UPS trucks and bags, not large freight trucks. This 21,000 square foot space currently occupied by Malia also has some light manufacturing assembling units. Malia makes melanoma detector machines. Currently, Malia employs about 50 people in the space. We expect Green Eileen to employ about 25 people on site. We expect to request a change of zoning which will allow Green Eileen to move into the space. Sincerely, Jeff Reich and Bill Thompson, property owners. So, I don't know if you want to talk about it now, but I think we'll take that under consideration.
Brian, we have a moment of silence
Yes.
for a longtime Irvington employee, Pam Strong, who passed away last weekend, I believe. She was a former library director.
So, yeah, so if everyone can please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I apologize. No, that's the start. What happens when we're late and everything gets rushed.
I would add to that I attended the service. I think Janice was there, maybe some others of you were there. It was a very touching service. She lived her life in Irvington. As a child, could tell you many, many stories about life in Irvington, and she was very, very dedicated to the contributions of the library to the village. So,
Just such a nice, pleasant person all those years.
and piano player.
Yes.
Actually, Brian, can you can announce right now?
Sure.
A bunch of people are here. We're launching a dog walk pilot program in Matheson Park, in case you haven't heard. It actually starts tomorrow. Your dog needs to have a Greenberg license, but if he or she does, you can stop by the rec department and get registered. So it'll be a 2-month pilot program. You can walk your dog in Matheson Park for select hours, and that starts tomorrow.
And I will add that you should have a Greenberg license anyway. Today's state law.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So you should have the license, so it should be easy.
So if somebody hasn't actually signed up for it yet, do they have to do something before tomorrow?
It's going to be running,
Register.
yeah, they have to register. It's not going to be like if you miss it tomorrow. It's going to be running until May.
And yeah, or April.
Oh, so yeah.
So it goes on for a while.
Right, that's right.
So there's still time to register is the point. Yeah.
Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll go on to public comments. Caesar, you were first.
Caesar Manfredi, President of Half Moon South. Now that Greenberg, town of Greenberg has passed on the Homestead Act, does the village of Irvington go along with that, or does it have to decide independently?
We do not. It just happened automatically.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comment? If not, we'll move ahead to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions or comments about this?
No.
If not, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Can I have a second? All in favor? Next item is discussion of Brightview Senior Living Project, Irvington. As you may know, today we had at 5:30, we had a site visit, which was attended by the Board of Trustees, the Planning Board, and the Architectural Review Board, where we got to walk the site, see where the proposed building would be. We got to compare it to where the previous proposed building would be, and obviously we got to see where the existing building is, because it's still there. We were able to ask questions, and I think that kind of brings everyone up to date. I think what we hope to accomplish tonight is to give Brightview the sense, if we as a board of trustees feels that the project can move forward, or if it cannot. I think that was our goal coming into this, so we could all figure out what we're doing with our lives. So, obviously we don't have these every week, so there's no real standard protocol. But I guess I'll throw it out to any of the trustees that want to open up, talking about where they are today versus where we were. It's about a month ago now. If anybody wants to lead off, or right. I guess I could lead off, whatever. I can lead off. All right. I was surprised by how much they could reduce the size of the project. I frankly never thought that they would even consider a smaller project. Because I think, again, just to back up a little bit, the use itself, assisted living, I think is actually a good use. I think that the plan that would have affordable units in historic homes on the site, historic buildings on the site, is very positive. I think having, getting, some assisted living out of the site is very positive, as well as maintaining mostly the look of kind of the open space there would all be kind of blanket positives of the overall proposal. The thing that stopped me in my tracks with the original proposal was the overall size of it was just frankly so big. I couldn't believe when I was on the site how big the buildings actually were, how close it moved to kind of some of the existing buildings. And there was no way in my mind that I could have moved forward with that design. It was kind of a non-starter for me. When they came back and they reduced it from 160,000 square feet to 100,000 square feet, I knew I had to see the site again. And I went up there today and I walked around and it was staked out. And the way I feel is it's gotten a lot closer. The issues still for me are, it's still very close. It's moved up a lot. So to me, I still get the kind of looming feeling of a building, especially because it's about the same height. That you picture the current building, I think it's about 6 feet lower. Kind of have it come straight out, almost to like where the road that goes up is. So to me, it just moved kind of that, if you see a picture of the existing building kind of move forward, to me it still feels like it's just big and tall kind of over Broadway. And then the other issue I have is kind of the north side of the building is very long and it's kind of straight. I kind of pictured kind of the people living at 120 kind of looking to that side of the building that's long. I think, I'm not going to talk about other concerns I have. To me, this is just about the overall size and mass. And if I could, go forward with a project like this. For me, although it got very close, at the end of the day, it still wasn't quite enough for me to move forward. So, do you want to go next, Connie?
Oh, sure. Obviously, you've all been following it. We've been following this very closely for a year now, almost. And for those of you who know me, I've been on this board for 6 years, know that there's several issues that I'm quite passionate about, and one is definitely historic, maintaining a historic character in Irvington. Many of you know, I probably know that I worked on the historic district for years. I was glad that we finally got that 2 years ago to be a national historic district in Main Street. I think that it's what our village does best, is to have that character. So, not that I'm an expert on all of Irvington history, but Irvington has a history of large estates that are very stately, with lots of space around them, and it also has part of it as the very gritty downtown retail stores and small businesses that was part of our history as well. So, the reason that I feel that this proposal is one of the best proposals to meet that goal is because I don't believe that having several small houses and breaking that property up would particularly add to the historic character of the village. I think having a building set back with a a very carefully laid out plan for landscaping is one thing that to me adds to the historic look of the village. I also find the stone walls incredibly iconic and important to the village, and that actually, in the current plan, there's actually an extension of the stone walls. But, you know, no one thing should determine what you support and don't support. I've also been incredibly worried about the diversity of housing in this village. And there aren't many. I've been with the committee, the Affordable Housing Committee, for 2 years maybe? 2 years. So is Janice. And finding places in the village where you could actually have affordable housing is not that easy. So finding an appropriate place for 6 affordable housing units in 3 preserved 19th century stone buildings is also very key to me. So this current plan, which is 30% smaller than, what, a month ago? So there's an affordable housing, which is hard to do in Irvington. There's a historic look to a development. And for me, maybe the oldest person on this board, the need for senior living in the village, I think, is very different from thinking that, well, you'll just send grandma to 119 and that'll be fine. I think that being on Route 119 or being in the village that you live in and grew up in is a lot different. So the use of that site for senior living seems a very appropriate use. It also seems like a much less damaging to, of course, anything that's a construction site is damaging for 2 years or more because everybody's disrupted. But in terms of traffic compared to a full office use, or traffic compared to a school, traffic compared to many other uses, I think is much less. Now, I'm going to say at this point, I think the mass is not a showstopper for me. I think that I can support the mass of this. I think that the process going forward is incredibly important. I think our professional architectural review board would play an incredibly important role to make something that might still look a little bit cookie cutter and not as stately as one might want, and that would be important to me. But I would trust that our architectural review board and our planning board could do, and our role with the, obviously that they have to meet all the criteria in the DEIS as well. So I'm going to say at this point, the mass of it has been reduced enough for me to feel comfortable with it.
Let me go, Mark, yet, let's go in time on the board. Since we have a better way to do it.
Unless I get to be senior. You're the youngest. No, you're not the youngest anymore.
So, I think that, I find myself on the fence, very specifically. I agree with a lot of what Connie is saying in terms of the benefits to preserve the buildings and the affordable housing. And I did some mapping and saw what it really looks like in that area of the size of the building, the open space in that area, or just not the open space, but the size of the properties and the size of the buildings in that area. And, it does not, I overlaid the Brightview building in, and it does not, to me, it doesn't feel, in that context, too big. But when you're on site and actually looking at the building, existing building, and then looking at where the front of the new building is going to be, and where the north side is going to be facing the 2 larger stone buildings, there's definitely a problem. So I'm at a point where I sort of feel like in some ways I'm not so much against the 100,000 square foot and the 116 units. I mean, I wish it was a little bit less than that. But I'm really concerned about how are they going to solve basically how the mass presents itself to the road, to someone driving by and looking at it from Broadway, and also from the view from the north, not just the two stone buildings, but the 120 North Broadway apartment complex, which will be staring right at the building. So unfortunately, I'm right on the fence because of that, because I'm not convinced that they can solve that problem, which is somewhat of an, Connie wants to say that it's an architectural design issue, and to some degree it is, a facade issue and an articulation issue, but to me it's also how that 100,000 square foot is configured on the space itself. I'm not convinced there isn't another kind of configuration that could actually pull that front face back away from Broadway again. Maybe, there's a lot of trade-offs that have gone into the design. So I guess that's to whether to go on too long. I'm not so much concerned about the square footage, but I am concerned, and I'm not satisfied with the configuration of the building as it is and how it presents itself because of that configuration.
Okay, all right, well, it's, as I said at the last meeting, I too was impressed at the effort Brightview put forward to reduce the size of the building. But to me, it is still an enormous building. I also, well, there's an issue that I have, which it seems a little more minor when I think about it, but it is something that kind of I can't really get comfortable with. Were we to allow a facility of this size to go forward, would cause Irvington to become part of this spread or proliferation of senior and assisted living facilities throughout the area. So you think about, it's almost like, well, people in Pleasantville, we have one, Tarrytown, yeah, we got one too, and at some point Irvington's going to be able to say, yeah, we got one of those huge facilities too. And I'm not comfortable with that. I do agree with Connie. I love the idea of preserving the historic buildings on the property. I also think it's great to have Irvington seniors be able to stay in the village. But when I envision that, it's not in a massive facility. And I also question how many Irvington seniors or seniors in general would be able to afford them. I understand that this area being more affluent than others, there's a higher probability of that, but we're talking about expensive units. One aspect of the new plan that I do not like is the reduction in affordable housing. So I think Brightview's decision to convert the independent, is that what's happening here? Convert the independent units to memory care allows them kind of to get out of any requirement to provide affordable housing. I still think if we are going to make it possible for them to produce over 110 revenue producing units, I think we should get out of it as much as we want to get out of it. So, to use Mark's words, I'm still definitely on the fence. Yeah, I'm just, I don't know.
Well,
The new member of the board.
that's easy. Let me approach it a little bit different, because there's aspects of what everybody said that I agree with and you don't entirely agree with. There is a property in this village that is for sale. The village does not own it. Somebody is going to buy it. It is very...
Can't hear.
Is this better?
Closer.
So,
A little closer to
a
the
little
mic.
closer.
A little louder.
But I have all this stuff under my...
You don't pull the mic towards you.
Nobody's ever asked me to do that. So something is going to happen with that site. There is going to be change. However much we like it the way it is not going to stay the way it is. We have only a certain amount of influence of what kind of change there is. We have a private owner who is entitled to sell his property. We have certainly have to give our approval. We have to consider all of the ramifications. But for me, because I'm a Libra and I balance everything, for me, the affordable housing and the historic preservation is very important. However, it wasn't important enough to have lived with the initial plan. So it's a question of when do the factors come into alignment where the positives that we're getting are a good trade-off for the village overall. I think I have no problem with the idea of this kind of facility. I have absolutely no issue with the fact that it is a for-profit model. That is what it is. You're buying it, you build it. I also very much appreciate the scaling back of the scope that you did really in response to this board's concern, and you obviously put a great deal of time and effort into trying to make this something that would work for all of us. I disagree with Christine about this part about the affordable housing part. I think since you don't have any independent units in the new proposal, you are actually not obliged to give us any affordables. But you are giving 6 and preserving those stone cottages, and I think that's a big plus for the village. I don't have a problem with the scope of what you've done. I also, part of it is just the layout, you know, can we squeeze this part, can we squeeze this part? It is moving closer to Broadway, but it's still almost 300 feet back from Broadway. Other possible uses of that site, if it is sold, may bring us a whole lot closer to Broadway. So at this point, is this, for me, I would still like to see some, I'm not going to use the word tweaking, we're not talking tweaking, but let's take another hard look. Is there any room literally for movement? Can we push this way? Can we push this way? But take another look together. Listening, of course, our architectural review board folks and our planning committee folks were on this walk around also. But in general, I am leaning positively towards this. Not exactly what you presented to us tonight, but towards the concept.
So there you have it. I think it's a maybe, probably not, yes, probably yes.
Yes,
So that's
the
clear, right?
process.
That really made it easy, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I think that, I'm not sure anybody actually brought up the issue of school children or not school children when factoring in the benefit in terms of taxes in and expenses out. I know a lot of people are concerned about the additional kids that might come from an alternative use, and you know that's a drain. I mean, kids are wonderful, but I think there are, the enemy of the good is the perfect. There's, if they're 80% positive and 20% negative, that's one way to look at things. And then there's always the, if not this, then what? And when you bring that into consideration, I think that's not your job, and I think everybody who's had concerns is, it's great for people to, bring those things up. They're important for us to hear. But believe me, everybody on this board, no matter where we've come down on, has been very thoughtful about this project, and I don't doubt that everybody here is very concerned about the future of the village and wants the best for the entire village. We have no other agenda.
So just to change your characterization, Brian, I'm a maybe, but if there are several steps toward more positive and one notch toward more positive, I think there's things that could be done that could bring this building into some sort of acceptability. But it's kind of we really have to work hard to see that happen.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, I don't think I've said that we wouldn't have to work hard. When you look at the DEIS process, the planning board process, the ARB process, if that DEIS doesn't become an appropriate final document and the questions can't be answered, then there's no positive outcome for Brightview. But I think the question in front of us now is, should they walk away and say goodbye, or should they go through this process? And I think for efficiency of government, if you know, everybody on this board thought no matter what they did with this DEIS, it would never be acceptable. It seems silly to go through the process. So I think what you're hearing here are that, I guess I'm hearing that 3 people are feeling that there is a good chance that going through that process, things will be adjusted and could come out as, in the end, as something that could be finalized.
Yeah, I think at least with the current plan for me, that's, you know, I think we've kind of got as close as we can. I mean, obviously, you came back with a revised plan that was, you know, conceptual. You know, it's always harder to respond to conceptual plans, but I think you've gotten kind of 5 responses to the conceptual plan as it currently stands. I guess now it's up to you to find out how helpful that was. If you think that there's more for you to do, if you think it's, you know, that you're never going to, you know, get it to the point where you move forward, and that it's going to be up to you and kind of weighing what you heard here and what I guess what you've heard at past meetings as well. You know, I think that, you know, a lot of the positives were outlined. I do think that there's some other issues that, you know, we're not focusing on now. It's just purely the, you know, the actual scale of the building that we focused on tonight, not, you know, ambulance usage and things like that, a lot of other things, but just the big overall scale use is what we kind of focused on tonight. Obviously, we mentioned some of the positives, which is why we continue to go back and look at it again, because there are a lot of positives to the plan. But I think that's, anything else you want to say?
I think that's a good summary.
Sorry, it couldn't be more definitive for everyone in the room, but you know, I think that's the way these things kind of work.
Could we speak?
You know, yeah, I think if you don't mind waiting to the public comment period, because, you know, it's not really the portion now, because I think we've heard a lot of comments from the public. We've gotten emails from the public. You know, I think you said that it's directly related just to the scope of the current project. You know, it's not really kind of new information, is my understanding. If you want to talk about anything else, traffic, all those other issues, you can wait to the public comment section. Okay. Next up is a request from DiNardo Development Corporation for a determination of specific provisions of the Fair and Affordable Housing Chapter of the Village Code with respect to a proposed attached single-family dwelling development at 30 to 40 South Broadway. Give it a minute. Yeah, yeah, we will move the public comment up ahead of the work session. And we can actually do it in front of the reports on boards as well. So we'll move it up to 16. The other items to this one.
Are we getting bumped or no?
No, you're not. Too many people here for this one.
Yes, you may remember such films.
You're with Bright.
No, I'm saying it
No.
when you want to go.
So we're going to talk a little bit, you're going to be talking a little bit about the fee question. Is that the next thing on the
Let me know when you're
agenda?
ready. I'll keep it on.
People are actually
Yeah.
It shows up.
that was noise in the background.
Oh, there's a public comment period, just in case. I don't know if anybody.
Yeah, we're moving it up.
They just
We're
couldn't.
moving it up to
Right.
after the auto parts.
They wanted to see.
I get it.
Right, I think maybe they misunderstood.
That's right, yeah, we're moving the public comment up until in front of the reports of boards, standing committees, and officers, if you want to talk about right here or anything else. But now on to DiNardo.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. My name is David Cooper from the law firm of Zarin and Steinmetz, representing DiNardo Capital Corporation. As you know, the owner of 30 South Broadway, the fee property, and the contract vendee of 40 South Broadway. We are currently processing a site plan and subdivision application before the planning board to develop or pursue a attached single-family development. In other words, a modern townhome-style development, multifamily development at the property. As you know, we were before your board for about a year or so pursuing a zoning text amendment that has now been enacted, and now we're pursuing the actual development plan. The plan is for 27 total units, 21 market rate units, and 6 affordable housing units, or fair and affordable housing units. That would also include the adaptive reuse of the McCon Stern building, which is the building on 40 South Broadway. We're here tonight back before your board for consideration of a request to modify certain siting and size requirements in your fair and affordable housing regulations. I'll go through them real quickly, but essentially your board reserved for itself certain discretion to modify certain siting requirements and some size requirements of affordable housing units where your board finds that it's appropriate to facilitate affordable housing development in the village. Let me introduce the team tonight. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there are a lot of people here tonight. Anthony Guccione from JMC, the project architects, and Joe DiNardo, one of the principals. The architect couldn't make it with us tonight, but certainly could answer questions for you. There were 2 threshold questions. We are right now before the planning board pursuing the site plan and subdivision application, but there are 2 threshold design questions that before we kind of get too far into the planning board process, we wanted to make sure that we were okay on. One is the ARB, which recently determined that the McCon Stern building is a building of local historic significance, allowing us to take advantage of an incentive that your board put into the recently enacted amendments for coverage, as long as there's an adaptive reuse of this type of building. The second is, what we're here for tonight, is the design and the siting and the size of the affordable units. There are 3 provisions in your affordable code which are implicated, and I'll go through them quickly and certainly can answer any questions. Your code right now requires that the affordable units be distributed among the various sizes, in other words, bedroom mixes, in the same proportion as the market rate units. In this case, the market rate units, we're looking at 3 to 4 bedroom units. We are proposing 2 bedroom units for the affordables. Your code does allow you to modify that requirement where you find that a better mix is quote, better suited to the provision of fair and affordable housing. And what we submit is that in this case, allowing the DiNardos to pursue 6 units of 2 bedrooms is better suited in this case, because it ends up allowing us to provide more units than if we were to have to do 3 to 4 bedroom units. You're going to look at much larger units. So one, on the McCon Stern building, you're probably looking at a much bigger bump out and sort of more sizable improvements, potentially changing the historic character of that building. And then 2, if you're looking at 3 to 4 bedroom units up on 30 South Broadway, one of the main planning policies I think this board was really dealing with and made clear early on is, we want to preserve as much open space and limit the coverage, certainly on 30 South Broadway, as much as possible. So in order to stay within the coverage requirements of 18%, and to get 2 to 3 bedroom units, we'd have to eliminate some units because we couldn't bump out the buildings any further. So on this aspect, what we would submit is that it is better suited to allow 2 bedroom units, affordable units, because you're going to yield more units than if you have to do something else. Similarly, your code requires that the affordable units be physically integrated into the design and the development, and there's a strong preference that all units are quote, on site. Now, we would submit that we meet both of that criteria with the current layout, because the entire site, at the end of the development is going to be one site. But there are 2 units that are sort of down the hill at 40 South Broadway and the McCon Stern building, while the rest will be up with the main development. So to the extent that your board determines that those 2 units are not fully integrated into the site or quote, off-site, again, the code permits your board to modify that requirement where it finds it better suited for the provision of affordable housing, as well as, in this case, also if it's you're able to provide more units. And again, in this case, allowing us to have 2 units sort of down on the hill in the adaptively reused McCon Stern building adds 2 more units to the overall project, so that this layout would actually benefit the village and obviously allows us to maximize the amount of affordable units that can be provided with this development. Finally, a little bit of math, and if I'm off, please jump in immediately. The size of the units, your affordable code generally requires that fair and affordable units are 80% of the gross floor area of the fair and affordable units are 80% of that of the market rate. Now, I know the village had some conversations with the county on this aspect well before we were before your board, but in terms of whether or not that 80% is actually reflective of what the market is for affordable units in Westchester. Here, although we are still finalizing the floor plans and the footprints of the actual buildings, we know that the maximum gross floor area of any market rate is going to be 2,800 square feet. They're not all going to be 2,800 square feet, they're probably lower, but what we wanted to do was do a conservative analysis for your board because we don't have a final average. So we are just assuming that the average is the maximum here, which is the 28,000 square feet. With 28,000, thank you. With that, the 80% is 2,240 square feet. So those are very large units, and again, you're going to run into the same issue as you would with 3 or 4 bedroom units. It has to be much larger, and most likely that would result in a reduction of the overall amount of units, and potentially some upgrades to or I shouldn't say upgrades, but improvements and bump outs to the McCon Stern building that is probably not consistent with the vision that this board had for adaptively reusing a locally historic significance building. Again, there was a provision which this board recently put into effect into this provision. I think this was actually predates our application, or at least it certainly predates adopting the amendments to the multifamily, where if the total floor area of the fair and affordable units is, quote, roughly equivalent to 80% of the average floor area of the market rate units multiplied by the required number of units, then the board would allow some flexibility with the 80%. We did submit a letter, and it goes through the math, but essentially, if you do the math, that gets you to about 1,120 square feet for each of these units. Our average floor area is going to be between 1,200 and 14, so we're well above the roughly equivalent requirement. And certainly we could take you through that if you feel necessary. But ultimately, what we're asking this board to do is allow us to exercise your discretion to allow us to have that size units in the location that we're proposing.
I think we have to take a step back a little bit when the affordable housing amendments to our code are fairly recent, but then the amendments we made to them to allow something like what you're proposing basically was so we didn't have our hands tied by our own legislation. So if a unique project came up, which I would classify this as a unique project, being able to reuse a historic building to create affordable housing, we would be able to review it on a case-by-case basis. The fact that we're having this so quickly is great because this is exactly what we want to do. But I think, overall, I've said I read your letter, it was pretty thorough, and it's all fresh in our minds from when we kind of passed these amendments to our own code. I don't have myself a lot of questions on this. I don't know if anyone else does, but.
I do.
Good.
So I understand all the points that you've made, and I certainly would support making modifications to our code in order to produce additional or as much affordable housing as possible. My only questions are, just remind me, what are the amenities? Is there a pool? Is there, what does the site offer?
No, the clubhouse and the pool were eliminated.
Okay.
There'll be some trail or two to get to the open green space. Right,
Okay.
green space.
Okay, and also, what about access to the main site for those units that are down below? How are you doing that?
It's most likely going to be along the sidewalk on Broadway, because unfortunately, the topography from 40 South Broadway up to 30 South Broadway is so steep that it's not really feasible to get it to even a meandering path in that way.
So when you say not really feasible, you can't build a staircase. You're saying it's impossible to build a staircase that connects more directly than making people walk all the way around?
Well, one, that the staircase would be more coverage, but two, I think it'd be a pretty steep staircase. That would,
It's about 40 feet of grade change, so at half-foot steps, that would be about 80 steps.
Okay. I'm willing to support any modifications that allow for the additional affordable housing. I don't like the idea, especially since we do have a provision for integration. I don't like the idea of people in those affordable units being kind of like cast down and detached from the main site. And will there be any exterior differences between the FAH units and the market rate units?
No, not an exterior.
Okay. Is that-
I have a question also. If I'm understanding correctly, there, as well as the existing white building that you're preserving and adapting, there's also 2 of your regular units on the lower site?
No, that's been eliminated.
That's been eliminated, so that's the only that house?
Yes.
Okay, so I would differentiate. I think that it makes perfect sense to just put 2 units in the White House instead of trying to mess around with that architecturally significant structure, which we already agreed is architecturally significant. It seems though that what your plan is to have 2 units of market rate per building and the 4 affordable units in one building, so that they would all be the same overall size, but one would fit 4 and the others would fit 2.
Correct.
My concern here is that there really is a need for more bedroom fair and affordable units. 2 bedrooms is tight. It would be wonderful if there could be at least one of those that would be 3 bedroom. I don't know if it's possible. I can almost see in my head which one you'd like to have it 4 equal pieces, but if perhaps one of them could be changed to make it a 3 bedroom, I think that would go a long way towards achieving the goals of what the fair and affordable housing legislation is looking for. And the final thing I would say, just Christina, in response to your question about access to the main site, now that there's not a pool or a clubhouse, I'm not sure there's much need for access to the...
Well, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
So that it's not like
It was a real issue when there's going to be a pool or a clubhouse, but...
Yeah.
And I also do think that it's kind of, while it is off-site, it definitely is, there's no debate about that. It's kind of a unique piece of property, a unique place to live in, as opposed to like if they were putting up, kind of substandard, separate housing or something like that. It's kind of unique.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's a real plus, that we're preserving that building and using it for affordables.
And that's what
support that.
for.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a beautiful setting too. I think everything about that is kind of neat. I think if we could have a 3-bedroom, maybe a 3-bedroom and a 1-bedroom, was that our thinking in one of those? Or?
Maybe.
We'll take a look at it.
Just because the goal is to have the number of bedrooms in the affordables reflect what's in the market, and I understand that this is not a perfect world, and I understand your rationale, and we want the maximum number of units. But if there's a way of reconfiguring it to get a 3-bedroom out of that would be really, really helpful.
We'll take a look at that.
I don't recall the, these are really important points. In the many meetings that I was in with Tiffany and Noonan, which type of affordable housing has the most need at the current time? I didn't remember if it was 3 bedrooms, but maybe you're remembering it was?
I believe there was a need for more bedrooms.
For the larger units?
For the larger units.
Okay, so then I would support that, and I also, I felt the same as Christina initially, that separation was going to be a problem, but it doesn't seem a problem to me now, but it does seem important to not deteriorate the historic look of that house. So by trying to smush too much inside it seems to be detrimental to, the other goal, which is, that very important look on Broadway coming from the south on that corner, and that was why that building was particularly important to preserve. So I think that the plan looks okay to me.
Yeah.
Looks like what we intended.
Yeah, I guess I was actually surprised to see the letter because I thought it was kind of Department of Inference. That in a sense that we talked pretty much about these details and about how it was really important. So I didn't know that there had to be an official determination of the board, but I'm not surprised by any of what you're representing. I think that what Janice is saying about trying to get a better mix or a different mix of bedrooms makes sense. The other thing I was going to say about, besides protecting the Stearns house itself, there was a lot of concern from residents about the impact of overdeveloping on that lower parcel. And I think that, if the trade-off is to reduce the development or eliminate further development on that parcel, but they are, in a sense, a little bit more isolated from, the larger upper neighborhood, I think it's a fair trade-off. And I think one of the values is that they are maintaining an incredible asset in terms of both the house itself, but the green space. I mean, that's a great play area. So, I'd be surprised if you don't see more people from up top coming down to try to play in that area. Maybe that's a way of drawing some people down there, is having some, it's not big enough for a field, but I don't know what you would do. Something that you could have, like, barbecue pit. You know what I'm saying? I think amenities down there that would make people come down to make better use of the space. Anyway, so overall, I'm happy, though, that we did take a look at trying to adjust the model legislation that we had originally adopted and make it more flexible for our requirements of our village.
So Mary Ann, what's the process now?
We haven't done this before. I'm just thinking, should we have some sort, why don't you make a motion of it?
We need a resolution, so we
Yeah, you know what, though? Why don't you, though, first figure out whether you can do the 3-in-1 and let us know, and then we can do the resolution at that point. Because I think what I'm hearing from the board members is that they'd like to see, 4 2-bedrooms, 1 3-bedroom, and 1 1-bedroom. And then at that point, we can have a resolution that, okay,
we would do that.
because we don't have one ready right now, and I think I'd rather,
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Well, I mean, you heard already from them, so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're happy to sort of give you something.
right, I mean, it won't be a question, a big discussion,
No,
but
no.
we can just vote on it. I'd rather draft something carefully so we've got it in the record.
Yeah, I think that's better than me trying to make it up with your
You
help.
say-
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We'll get something to you soon.
Yeah, so hopefully,
Great.
take it up for our next meeting.
Yeah, well, as soon as we hear from them.
Is this, can I just, is this anything that's blocking at the planning board right now? I mean, can you bring back a sense of the board to them, or is it?
No, well, they won't be at the planning board until the beginning of April, so
So we're still,
hopefully we'll hear from them. But it's not on anything.
okay, good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good
Thank you.
Continuation of a public hearing to consider local law amending the zoning code to permit accessory apartments in one-family dwelling subject to a special permit.
But there won't be any more buildings on the top, it's just that they'll have some small.
It is a public hearing.
Yes, public hearing.
We're
is
looking for
still
people
open.
to talk to us.
Exactly, we'll let Mary Ann give us a little recap, and then we'll see if there's anything coming.
What were you waiting for me? Dave Cooper.
If you want to stick around.
All you do is talk today.
Yeah, so I don't know if you want to just, give us an overview, Mary Ann. Do a good job of that on the accessory apartments,
Okay.
Get yourself here.
keeping the affordable housing theme going tonight.
Where is it? Okay.
9.
Number 9. Did SECRA and the actual amending.
You just wanted me to go through the law?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Yeah, this would allow in one-family buildings, so in one-family residences, which may or may not be in one-family districts. If you've got a one-family building in the business district, it would be, by special permit, you could have an accessory apartment. Or you can have it either in the main building or in an outbuilding. An outbuilding is defined, but an outbuilding does not include a garage. The definition of outbuilding was amended to clarify that it doesn't include a garage. The purposes are stated in the law. Apartments to create small rental housing units without increasing building density by utilizing existing housing stock and resources. Provide economic support for residents, particularly homeowners who would benefit from rental income, and those of moderate means for whom there are limited housing objects in the village, and to encourage diversity in the population of Irvington. Those are the board's reasons for enacting it. All right, the requirements for special permit for the accessory apartment is, like I said, it has to be a one-family dwelling. It can be in the principal dwelling or an outbuilding, but not a garage. The owner of the single-family residence must live in one of the units, either the main one or the accessory apartment. It can't be larger than 2 bedrooms. The residence for which the permit is sought has to have been in existence in its present size for at least 5 years prior to applying for the permit. The reason that's there is so somebody doesn't build something and build a bigger house so that they could have an accessory apartment. No exterior changes can be made to the building in which the accessory apartment is located that would alter the single-family appearance and character of the house. Then the planning board, because it'll be the planning board that issues the special permit, has to make sure that it won't adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. In applying this requirement, the planning board should consider the effect of the apartment on parking, traffic, noise, congestion, appearance, and any other factor that they might be relevant. The accessory apartment has to comply with the New York State Uniform Fire and Building Code. There can't be any violations to the code for the main house. And then there's a limit that no more than 50 accessory apartment special permits can be in existence at any one time. It's got the procedure in there, and then we don't really need to go through. So the building inspector will make an inspection of the unit to make sure it complies with the building code. The special permit shall be issued for a period of not more than 3 years and then may be removed, can be renewed. An issue came up last time. Some people thought, why shouldn't it be longer? The Affordable Housing Committee thought 3 years made sense, at least for the first go-round, to make sure that there's no issues. And that subsequently, it seems that there aren't any issues. The board could reconsider what the how long they should be effective for. An accessory apartment expires automatically if the ownership of the building changes or if the owner doesn't occupy the building any longer. And it's got penalties, fees, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think the only item that had a lot of discussion was the 3-year renewal, which we thought was the right balance between control and allowing
So it's the same as the last meeting.
Any comment from the board before we open it up to the public? Public comment? Ann?
Sorry. Order.
Ann Atchison, 18 South Dutcher Street. I have one question and one comment. Can you turn a garage into an accessory apartment?
No, no. Right now, the accessory use in the code is not for garage. It's garage for the storage of automobiles. So garages are for the storage of automobiles. So now without getting
The whole site plan thing.
Pardon? Well, more than site plan, you need a variance because right now it's not. It wouldn't.
So this applies to some kind of building, like a guest house or something that might be on someone's property.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then my second idea that I had was, I've spent a lot of time in January thinking about streetscape. And one of the things I was thinking about is parking. And it occurred to me when you started talking about this law that there could be something similar. I don't know exactly how you would do it, where people who have extra parking spaces could be encouraged to open up their accessory parking spaces to people. So I know, and then once I started thinking about it, I started looking, and there are in fact a lot of spaces around that are underutilized because they belong to somebody's house. And so I was wondering whether you could also do some kind of thing where you could not just have an accessory apartment, but you could have an accessory parking space and you know, donate it to the village for a tax break or whatever it would be. And that way, different, you know, store employees or whoever could park there. And I'm thinking of people who have, like on some of the side streets, there's like almost a half lot that's empty that people could park in. A lot of the people who live in my neighborhood don't drive their car all the time, like, because they're old. And so maybe they would like somewhere to park their car while they're not driving it. And it just occurred to me that it's another way to gather resources for the village without having to create a parking lot, which we all know is impossible to do. And P.S. I thought of this when I was, for the 15th time, unable to park on my own street.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
Anyone else? Any public comment? Okay. I guess I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Uh,
You have the revised
I
one.
have the revised, yes. Resolved to make finding under a New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, SUPRA, that the proposed local law will have no adverse impacts on the environment and therefore issue a negative declaration. And be it further resolved, to adopt a local law amending the zoning code and permit accessory apartments and one-family dwellings subject to special permit. Would someone like to make a motion?
So I make the motion?
Someone like to second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This took a long time. A lot of meetings.
It's a low-hanging fruit for a year and a half.
Yeah, it was hard enough.
Appointment of a court clerk. Some exciting news here, Larry. We're building in anticipation. So I don't know if you want to give a little background on Deborah Bart.
Yeah, so the judge and I interviewed Ms. Fard. She's a highly qualified candidate who is currently working for the Office of Court Administration. She's actually in charge of training and supporting the local town and village courts in the area. So we're highly qualified, and we're happy to have her join the village.
So basically, we're hiring the person that would call the questions, so I think it's good.
Used to answer the questions about.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on this? I think it was great that we were able to identify such a great candidate and that she was available. So, without any further questions, be it resolved that Deborah Barr is hereby appointed to the position of court clerk effective March 21st, 2016, and an annual salary of $79,000. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Authorization of tax certiorari settlements. We have two here.
The first one pertains to 108 Main Street. It goes from the years 2011 to the 2015 roll. These are actually the years that Greenberg was doing the assessing. So it was really against the Greenberg roll and not so much the Irvington one where we have more discretion. It goes from the original assessment of $24,200 to a decrease varying year by year between $16,686 and $17,732. Collectively, for the 5 years, it would be a refund of approximately $9,248.
And that's kind of in the realm of what we had.
We did have a budget for that, basically was projected months ago, but it has come to fruition that there's a settlement on this.
Okay. Maybe anybody have questions? Otherwise, I'll quickly read this. Maybe not the whole thing. Whereas petitions have been filed by 108 Main Street challenging real property tax assessments of the town of Greenberg's assessment roll with respect to the subject property for 2011-2014 tax years. Whereas petitioner's actions are now pending in Supreme Court, Westchester County, whereas the town and petitioner have reached a mutually agreeable resolution. Now therefore, the village is authorized to effectuate a settlement commensurate with the following terms. As detailed by the clerk treasurer, the village of Irvington has a refund of $9,248.31. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Second one,
Second one is for 35 South Broadway, and it's for the years only 2008 through 2010. These were the years where the village was the assessing unit. There was no decrease for the subsequent years of 2011 through 15. The original assessment was $220,000 to a reduction varying between $203,060 and $222,000. This represents a refund of $10,959.
and this is also, we had this approved.
It's identified, and this has been, they've been filing the search really since 2008.
All right, there's no questions. Whereas petitions have been filed by Cedar Hills Company challenging real property tax assessments on the town of Greenberg's assessment roll with respect to the subject property for 2008 to 2015 tax years. Whereas petitioner's actions are now pending in Supreme Court, Westchester County, and whereas the town and petitioner have reached a mutually agreeable resolution, now therefore the village is authorized to effectuate a settlement commensurate with the following terms, as detailed by the clerk treasurer. The village of Irvington's share of the refund is $10,959.21. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Approval of filming permit for CBS Television Studios. Main Street, Larry?
Yeah, so there's actually two components. This is a pilot related to the Nancy Drew series that they're creating. And there are two components to it. One involves filming in front of a storefront or two on Main Street, which obviously they've worked closely with them and hopefully their neighbors. And that is on March 14th, a week from tonight. The Main Street portion of the shoot will last until about the middle of the day. Noontime is the projection. And then they'll be moving over to a residence on 14 Washington Avenue. And so we're working closely with them on notifications of the neighborhood and making sure that happens to them. So we're giving them a list of the residences that need to be notified.
Wait, the Main Street, I'm sorry, what's the Main Street portion, Larry?
The Main Street portion is shooting outside of the
timelines.
fitness. Hold on.
6 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
Well, 6 a.m. is when they first start convening up behind the church. They will not be doing anything until 7 a.m., at which time they'll be filming actually a car driving, not with any chase cars, not any, just a car
Okay.
driving down.
But it's not going to
Stop traffic?
stop traffic for commuters?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
But they know they're going to be stopped.
There may be some rubbernecking, so there's no stoppage of cars.
No, they know that there's going to be traffic. They know
yeah.
there's heavy traffic.
Oh, they know, and as far as the driving part of it, yes, I know that. But then there's also filming in front of the fitness.
Method Fitness.
Method Fitness and Poppy Studio.
And my understanding is they've already reached out to the potentially impacted businesses along that block, the Jordanes.
They said they have, but we're going to verify all that this week, of course.
Have we dealt with CBS Television Studios before?
Not with them, no.
And there's no explosions or gunfire.
No. That was our first question.
Yes.
Yes.
Although an explosion,
But might there be a slowdown of traffic in the morning when they're doing the car driving?
Yeah, that's
sequence?
really
No, they're not for the, there's, the Main Street filming is broken up into two components. The first is simply a car with the main actress driving the car with a camera person in the car next to her filming. There's no chase car, there's no There's no stoppage of traffic. They know that they're going to be going anywhere from 0 to 15 or 20 miles an hour. And if they have to make a couple of passes driving with that car, they will. But but that doesn't involve stopping traffic.
Okay.
It's one more car on Main Street.
Right. For
And going below the speed limit.
Get them a slow down Irvington decal.
No, so the part that I could envision there being some slowdown is really from rubbernecking when they're filming out on the sidewalk and there's going to be a few parking spaces blocked off. There will be police with them. And so the joke we made is that's part of the slowdown in Irvington, to have activity on the sidewalk that people are looking at. But no, but there's no blockage of traffic at that point either.
Okay.
And the filming on 14 West Washington Avenue is self-contained on the property. There's no parking out on the street. They're staging everything off-site.
Okay. Resolved to approve a filming permit for CBS Television Studios for filming on Main Street and 14 Washington Avenue on March 14, 2016, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. for a permit fee of $5,000. Make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Award of contract for miscellaneous hardware and supplies.
Just straightforward, we are required to bid out our contracts for purchases of commodities like this. Obviously, individual purchases of hardware are very small, but in the aggregate, we do purchase more than $20,000, which is the bid limit. So we did bid this out competitively. We have and are recommending the award of a contract to 2 different suppliers of similar, that are offering similar discount levels, and it gives us the ability to be able to float back and forth between the 2 depending on price and availability of a particular item that our DPW needs or any of the village staff. This is consistent with what we've done in the past, so it's really...
Reader's Hardware.
It is not in Reader's Hardware, it's Dobbs.
It's Dobbs, I'm sorry.
I just wondered what we did.
Where's 144 Main Street?
Yeah, exactly. No, sorry, Dobbs, sorry.
Any questions on this? Whereas sealed bids were received and opened on March 2nd, 2016, 11 a.m. at Village Hall as follows: Irvington Hardware, 10% discount on 1-by-1 basis, 20% on case bulk quantities. Reader's Hardware, that's at 81 Main Street, Irvington, New York. Reader's Hardware, 20% discount on retail, 144 Main Street in Dobbs Ferry. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bids submitted and determined that the bidders are in order and responsive to the specifications, now therefore be it resolved. The village administrator is authorized to execute a purchase contract for miscellaneous hardware and supplies for both Irvington Hardware and Reader's Hardware. Make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm guessing this is similarly
Yes.
for auto parts. This is a award of contract for miscellaneous award of contract for auto parts for 2016-04.
Yeah, so just by explanation, there's 4 different suppliers here. You can probably figure out from this that each of them offers different models of different makes of parts, Chevrolet and Ford, et cetera. So all 4 of these will be at the disposal of the mechanics garage.
Whereas sealed bids were received and opened on March 2nd, 2016, 11 a.m. in Village Hall as follows: Red's Auto and Truck Parts in Portchester, amount of discount 25%. Schultz Ford Lincoln in Nanuet, list minus 31%. Curry Chevrolet in Scarsdale, list minus 30%. Scarsdale, 1% there. A&J Auto Parts in Yonkers, anywhere from list minus 25 to list minus 55, depending on the part needed. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bids submitted and determined that all bids are responsive to the specifications, and whereas the central garage needs to purchase parts for a variety of different vehicle makes and models, necessitating the designation of multiple suppliers, now therefore be it resolved that the village administrator is authorized to execute a purchase contract for auto parts with each of its 4 suppliers on the terms outlined above. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Now we'll go back to public comment. So we'll have it at the end as well in case you want to report to talk about the other stuff. But public comment. Before you guys stand up.
Pat Ryan, 10 South Dutcher Street. I guess I just wanted to say a few words about Brightview. I was actually very pleased to see the proposal that they came back with. I thought it was quite a reduction in the number of units. I was very pleased to see that they were still going to preserve the 3 historic buildings on the site, that they were going to do affordable housing, even though they really didn't have to. I guess I have some question about the role of the different boards in the process. My sense was that this board was trying to determine whether they could agree with the scope, not the design or the placement, but perhaps I'm wrong. I thought that that was more planning board and ARB. So can someone help me with that?
Well, yeah, this is a little bit different because they're seeking a zoning change.
Right.
And this board is the only one that can make a zoning change. And they have to feel comfortable that it won't, change the character of the neighborhood. And not only are they making the zoning change, this is the board that's doing the environmental impact analysis.
Okay, so this is where the decision really lies in terms of the whole.
They have to consider all those things, but I mean, it can then go to the planning board that could make, other determinations, but before this board can, enact a zoning change, they have to be comfortable with all
With the whole,
environmental
okay.
impacts on it.
I guess my second question, yes, and my second question has to do with the whole issue of the zoning change, because there have been some concerns raised that this is a dangerous precedent, and I would like to know. I mean, I've had some years as liaison to the building department, so I had a little bit of experience with that, and I really question whether this is a dangerous precedent. Is it? I mean, I think we've had these kinds of amendments many times over the years.
Yeah, I think it's up to whoever's interpreting it as a dangerous precedent or not.
But we have had many.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier. There's some, the burn building wasn't allowed to be used for residential.
Mhm.
That's a big zoning change. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
So there's a million examples. There's
But we've done many of these over the years.
We have done many.
We have,
over the
okay.
years.
And I guess my next issue is going to be the whole historic character of Broadway, which, I love Broadway, lived in this village for a very long time, have seen some changes along Broadway. But in reality, Broadway is made up of 2 apartment complexes, any number of residences that were built in the 1960s, this building, which is a 1970 building. Certainly the churches are historic, except for Immaculate Conception, which is not a historic building. The homes on the eastern side, south of Immaculate Conception, are not historic. So I don't think it's really a question of preserving historic Broadway. I think it's a question of preserving the landscaping, the viewscape, the appearance. But, these are not historic except for the 3 buildings that they're saying they will preserve. So I have a hard time with that kind of presentation. I also have to say that at this point, I believe that, as I said the last time, we all have an obligation to provide the kinds of housing that are needed. I'll just say that I spent, this is a little aside, I spent the last week back and forth to Westchester Medical Center, helping to care for the interests of my sister, who is 82 years old and was running into some serious medical problems. Now, we can all say, well, there's housing in Elmsford, or there's housing in Tarrytown. I don't know why. What is the problem with there being housing in Irvington? If the scope of the development is acceptable, if the design is acceptable, it would seem to me that this is the kind of thing that we have an obligation to be looking at. And I have to say that I find it very disappointing to see that we're not willing to kind of look beyond some of the initial fear and the initial concern. I am more concerned about what will happen if someone else comes in and develops that property. Now, maybe people are more comfortable with 7 McMansions, with the change in the landscape. I think we have a much better chance of having some decent open space, some good landscaping, some historic buildings, if this development goes forward. But if we have 7 McMansions, the stone walls will go, the buildings will go, the sight lines will go. They won't be up on the hill. They will be very close to Broadway. There will be driveways, there will be cars. It will change the whole nature of that property. So I think we should, look a little more closely at this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'll say something. Only because I guess...
Just give your name first.
Sure. Patty Graubart, 11 Sycamore Lane. I was a little disappointed because I came here, I think in the discussions of the facility and the revisions, I frankly, because I think it is a big deal to revise the zoning of a property, and that there should be some demonstrable benefit to the residents. And what I guess I would like to hear from the board is sort of the risk-benefit analysis of this revision. Because I know, Connie, you said, if not this, then what? And the what, for me, is that the property's developed in the manner in which it's zoned. So there would be homes there. I think there's sort of a misconception that this facility, there's a driveway, there's cars, there's people there. It's going to have an impact. And I guess I wanted to hear a little bit more of the perception of what the impact would be with the change. And whether there was justification for the revision to have such, to me, is a pretty drastic change to put this huge building there. And what I don't want, and I guess for the people, who would love to have an assisted living facility, but are thinking about, the value of their homes, their property value, what's going to go on in their direct neighborhood. And I really didn't hear sort of those considerations. It was really sort of a view for Bridgeview and an opinion for Bridgeview, but not really, for the residents. And I'm, saying, okay, the quality of life here, I think, to change the aesthetic of the entire village for the benefit of a corporation, is that justification for this revision? Because there's no guarantee that any residents of Irvington will go into this facility. And I guess I just don't understand sort of the process. To almost turn, Broadway into Central Avenue. That's the way I think of it. And to me, that's a big change. And I think when people move here, we pay taxes. You pay for that Irvington aesthetic. And I think of other issues in the village that maybe we should be tackling, like bringing a vibrant retail economy to Main Street. There's talk that, no traffic. I will tell you, I don't know if anyone here has kids in high school. Anyone on the board have kids in high school?
Middle school.
Well, it's taking me every morning now 20 minutes, 25 minutes to get from the drop-off down to the corner of Broadway. The other day when it rained, it took 40 minutes. It'll take me 20, 25 minutes to get from my home to Terrytown in the evening at 5 o'clock. Broadway is just gridlock these days, and I'm not sure if there's a change, but I feel like if we're going to have a discussion about this facility, that should have been the priority tonight. How does this
I think
affect?
we've already discussed that a lot. I think tonight.
I haven't seen any risk benefit analysis, and I know we talk about tax revenue, but you know, what if we have to think about this in perpetuity? What if Brightview sells this facility to a nonprofit? Right?
So what happened to Bridge Street? I mean, there's a lot, I mean.
Right, no, it's a lot of
I mean,
different
that's
things.
what,
and
I know
think
people
that
said,
this
what
is-
if the building's abandoned? That's what happened with the current building, you know, so
Right.
it's.
So I'm
those
saying,
things all happen, I agree.
that's what I wanted
But
to
we've been,
hear.
I think we have been talking about those things for about 6 weeks. County kind of gave her risk benefit tonight, why she supports it, because they're gonna keep the historic buildings, they're gonna add affordable, I mean, I don't want to go through the whole thing again.
No,
but-
I don't think that, but I think sort of really fundamental, looking at the
We have
real
public
issues that affect the
hearings.
residents.
There was just, the thing is, there was one issue tonight.
Yeah.
Because the board's gonna, if they go forward with this proposal, the board's gonna have to look at a lot of issues. It's gonna have to look at risk benefits, it's gonna have to look at traffic, it's gonna have to look at,
The ambulance corps is another big one for me.
Yeah, the roads, the ambulance, the fire.
Right,
all
the ambulance.
that.
I didn't even bring that up.
No, it's gonna have to look at all of that. But the point is, the applicant came to the village, because the village had so many problems with the size of it. And it was pretty clear that they weren't gonna approve that. And they say, if we reduce it, have we reduced it enough that you might buy it, assuming we can satisfy everything, I don't know, might approve it, assuming else. So tonight was just sort of a threshold of, should they go forward with the EIS? Could the board live with something this size? There was one question that they asked. and
Because
that's
the
what
last
board
time,
was
we
the
said
answer
no,
to.
we said it's
Yeah.
too big.
And the board's, the issues you're talking about, the board's gonna, if in fact.
Okay, yeah, I just
they
want to
go
make
forward,
sure that
The board
we're,
has to look at all the, those questions were all questions, that were asked about the DEIS, and they haven't addressed them yet because they're deciding, it's a big investment for them of time and money,
Right.
whether they should go forward with it if the board is not gonna approve it because it's too big. So that's all they needed to know is the threshold, and the board
But-
has to get back on those.
but I think we fundamentally know, and having gone through this before, that these companies are based on, you know, it's a for-profit organization, they have to hit a certain economic target and meet their ROE, right? So they have to build a big facility, and we know that. So I guess that's my sort of quandary, and I say, like deja vu all over again, that we're going through this, but we know that they can't go anywhere with it.
Well, they went from 160,000 to 100, and they said, is that enough?
But
That
it's
was
still
it.
too big, right? I mean, that
Well,
was sort of the
that's-
sense
don't
I
know
got
if-
tonight,
I don't know
that
if
it
I don't know,
was
I think it
big.
was kind of a mixed board tonight. So I don't know what Bridgeview heard, Brightview? Bridgeview Tavern is always in my mind. I don't know what Brightview heard, you know, I don't know if they heard that, I don't know if I was Brightview, if I would say, you know, kind of, you know, the board that kind of said maybe, probably not, but maybe I would, you know, I don't know if I would go ahead with the cost, I mean, the cost they've already spent is a lot.
Right, and it's
So-
going, it's like going in circles.
And
So
I
that's
think
where
that's
my
for them to
frustration
decide,
comes
you know,
from.
they gotta come back and decide, and then we can tackle all those other issues,
Right.
you know, if they decide to come back.
But I just want to make sure that that the community is included, you know, really,
Well, I mean,
and those
we-
sort of fundamental
I mean,
issues
we've had, I don't know,
that we have.
4 or 5 public hearings that
Right.
we got all the
Okay.
information.
Stephen Creek, 15 Meadowbrook Road. I would actually echo what she said. I've been to most of the meetings, and I don't understand the real benefit
You're
to the
talking
village.
microphone, please. Microphone, please.
I don't fully understand the benefits to the village. I am very opposed to the project. I think it will drastically change the character of that particular neighborhood. And I'm very, I don't see any reason to commercialize that part of Irvington. I was here and saw a figure listed of a tax benefit of $700,000 or something, which didn't strike me as, you know, dramatically significant for a village of this size and wealth. The idea that, you know, all of us are going to have our elderly parents live there or live there when we become elderly, I think is ridiculous, forgive me. And the fact that they're eliminating the independent living component of it strikes me as a huge negative, in that most of the assisted living residents, and I have a mother who's in assisted living, are not going to contribute to the village of Irvington or to the businesses. They're going to be in the facility, basically. They may be bussed out on occasion to go to various events. I mean, I don't understand I agree, I don't understand the benefit to Irvington and how it outweighs the dramatic possibility of changing that whole character of that neighborhood. And I don't see the purpose. I just literally don't see the purpose.
The only thing I'll disagree with you on is that it's been a commercial area since the 60s. So at one point there were 300 people working there a day, so.
Yeah, but this is
So everyone says it's not commercial. I just want everyone to know that it currently is commercial under.
I guess that's not what I mean by commercial.
Okay.
What I mean by commercial.
Because a lot of people have said it, not to share.
Has to do with the traffic patterns, which are, I agree with everyone who said they're unbearable, because they are. I make a left turn every morning on Broadway. It's quite dangerous and very, very difficult, and I'm dependent on the benevolence of someone coming south to stop when the traffic is backed up from the turnoffs to the school to let me get out to at least try to make my left turn. So increasing traffic is really a big negative. But what I mean by commercial is this is a corporation, and it's not a local business. This is like a national corporation, and decisions will not be local. I mean, yes, perhaps they'll appeal to you with a scale or a design or something that seems suitable. But if 3 years from now or 5 years from now, it's not turning profit, whatever decisions they make are going to have nothing to do with it. They want to change the dishes and they want to change the linens to, minor things. It's going to have nothing to do. But major things are also going to have nothing to do. We're not going to have any input into this at all. That's what I mean by commercial. It's not a resident who's tied to the community. I mean, I personally think that 7 residences would be much, much better. Those people will identify with Irvington. They'll want to be in Irvington. It won't be a business. It's making decisions independent of Irvington that's based on their bottom line profit. I mean, whether they sell it, they empty it, they convert it.
That's what it is now.
So,
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morrow? You were leaning already.
Hi, I'm Neil Marr, 1 Shady Lane, Irvington, New York. I had a quick question. What are you deciding tonight? Are you deciding to amend the zone?
Please talk to the microphone.
Are you deciding to whether or not you...
Mike, take the mic and just take it out. There, right.
Neil Marr, 1 Shady Lane. I just want to understand what you're deciding tonight. Are you deciding whether or not to amend the code or just to give them a signal to come back or not?
That's correct.
Okay.
After our previous meeting, we said it was too big.
Right.
It was a non-starter, so they came back with their proposal. We did a site walk today.
Right, I understand.
Then they wanted our feedback.
So if you say for them to come back, do we all get more input? Do we all get to come back and talk to you and provide, what our feelings are about these plans? Or is it
Yes.
sort of now then in your hands alone?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, great. So I'm here tonight to ask those questions, but also just to give you an update on the petition that I brought before you a month ago. Still up on change.org. It was a petition signed at that point to oppose the zoning amendment. I'm just here tonight to give you a quick update. As of tonight, there are over 315 signers to that petition. So it continues to grow in people who are opposing the Brightview development. I'm sorry. I was here a month ago and I had a petition that people in Irvington signed opposing the zoning amendment. Right now, there are over 315 people who have signed that petition. They've also included comments, and I just wanted to add 3 comments that they included since our last meeting, so you can get an idea of either how their ideas have either changed or remained the same over this period. One commenter wrote, "One of the most important reasons we choose to live in Irvington is because of the village's small-town historic charm. The cornerstone of this heritage is brought..." I'm sorry. That's the petition. I'm sorry.
It is great.
This is one comment. "While I'm fully supportive of the need for an assisted living facility and additional low-income housing in our community, the Brightview proposal is completely out of scale to what could be considered here. Number 2, rezoning and allowing this facility to be built would forever change the character of this river town increased pollution, additional traffic to an already highly saturated area, police, fire, emergencies will overburden us. These are some of the concerns associated with building such a facility. In addition, there is a redundancy as this facility exists in 2 areas within a short distance from Irvington. And then finally, we're already losing one beautifully historic structure on Broadway in the Foundation for Economic Education. Why did developers' interests take precedence over the interests of village residents? Now, the petitioners are aware that the building on that property is not a historic building, but they do understand or believe that it is in character with the historic viewshed of Broadway. So while I do agree with what my historic partner over here says about the building itself not being historic, I do think there are people in this village who believe that the viewshed of that corridor, there are historic pieces to it, and that if we chip away at those pieces and create things that look quite different, it could destroy what they feel is a historic character to it. I also remember in our last meeting that someone used the term that they would be okay with a boutique hotel, a boutique assisted living structure there. I just don't think that people believe, the people who signed this petition believe that the development as it is a boutique assisted living center. So just to wrap up, the zoning amendment, the people are opposed to it, it seems, because they still believe it's too large. It'll greatly increase traffic congestion. It will overburden volunteer ambulance corps, and it will weaken our zoning laws. So I just wanted to just give you an update on that petition.
Thank you.
Douglas McClure. I live down on Dutch Street. I just want to address the traffic situation. My mother lives in a larger facility up in Maine than this one that has independent living and assisted care. I'm up there a lot because my mother is now in assisted living. And I can tell you every time I drive in there, there is never another car coming out. When the shift changes happen, they happen at off hours. And the fact that this is now going to assisted living and not independent living means the traffic, the added traffic will be even less because assisted living people don't drive. I agree there's a terrible situation right now during school, but that's school. That's mostly parents driving their kids up, and my son has gotten very lazy, but there's a lot of people driving their kids up to school, and that is not the time when this facility will be adding traffic to our roads. So although that's a very easy argument for people to make, I think we should keep it in perspective what's actually happening here for the traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Experienced microphone guy.
Hi, I'm Mark Keefe, 85 North Broadway, Irvington. I'm here with my wife, Claire. We've lived right across the street from where the facility, the proposed facility is going for about 16 years now. We brought up all 3 of our children through the Irvington schools. Our youngest is 9th grader in high school. Our children encourage them to walk to school. We almost never drive them. I've witnessed personally several very serious accidents along that stretch of Broadway right in front of our house. I've seen people cut out of their car and airlifted out. Traffic is quite a problem there. It's very dangerous getting into our driveway and getting out of our driveway. People get very impatient when you slow down and want to park your car or leave your house. So I'm very concerned about traffic. I think in keeping this discussion about scale, I hope that we don't forget about traffic and safety, especially of our children and people living along Broadway. Our house and several other houses are in fact built several decades earlier than the 1960s. May not be historic, but there's still a character along that stretch of Broadway, Villa Luaro, several other houses. So I'm very concerned about the current proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not experienced with microphones.
That's easier.
Ellen Weissman, 19 Meadowbrook Road. I gather that the discussion tonight was about the size of the building and really limited to that, but I really don't understand how you can separate that from the other concerns.
I think it's just because we discussed the other concerns. Sure.
Okay, well, then let me address my,
Sure.
So they started out with 160 units, now they're at 116 units. That's still 20% more than the pretty sizable facility on 119. And I think it's a pretty common strategy that, you know, if you're negotiating or trying to do something, you ask for something a lot bigger than what you expect. You're ultimately going to end up with, and I'm concerned that that's what's going on here. The fact is, this is still an enormous facility that will have a significant impact on traffic on Broadway. I disagree with the gentleman who said that it won't. My parents also live in an assisted living facility. Every time I go there, it's impossible to find a place to park. People are coming and going. Shift changes do happen around the same time as school starts in the morning. And I don't think it is likely that this will have no impact on traffic. Another concern that came up today was that if houses were built there, there would be, more children. Fact is, you've just approved accessory apartments. Certainly more children could be living in those accessory apartments. I don't view the, alternative of having houses up there that might contain school children. You should be concerned about. Irvington is a bedroom community, and I think that's fine. I'm more concerned about people living there who are not generally from Irvington and who will be voting in elections and for taxes or against taxes for things that they won't be benefiting from. And I think that that could have a huge negative impact on the community, much more so than the possibility of some extra school children in a few houses. I'm a little perplexed on how the size of the building can be separated from traffic, how it can be separated from impact on ambulance and other services.
I just want to stop you right there for a second. We haven't separated them. We've gotten to a point where we said the project was
Okay,
dead.
but in order to give them
And
a
we're-
go-ahead or a not go-ahead, it's not just how the building
No, but
looks
like-
on
no,
the
it's not-
road, it's the whole impact on the
This isn't like we're
community.
voting tonight. We're going to say this is
Okay.
small enough that we're going to vote. This is like one step. They might walk away and we never see them again tonight. They might.
But everybody's comments address the bulk of the building, and I think
That's
that
because that's all we
whether,
wanted to discuss tonight.
but
We discussed all
whether-
the other issues before.
okay, in my opinion, the bulk of the building alone it isn't the deciding factor on whether or not it would be feasible
And
to
we
have this.
agree with you 100%.
Okay.
That is one issue that was it was a game stopper for us. The game was over. They said they could change it. They said they just change it enough, and we had to tell them tonight if it did or not. That was the purpose of tonight. Then we can deal with all the other issues.
It's still huge.
Ann Atchison, 18 South Dutcher Street. Dutcher Street is the best street, yay. Everyone who's spoken from the village has lived on Dutcher Street, this bit from the main street. Just so you know, we're cool. I just wanted to say I support the process completely, and I think that planning board meetings and been against enough things in this village and for a few things too, but maybe you guys don't realize that, that I understand the whole process of the DEIS, and I understand that once that document comes to you guys, you will look at it and you will have a chance to decide whether they have mitigated the negative impacts of this enough to satisfy you to send them to the planning board after changing the zoning. So I think that we all need to be patient about that. But I just have two things to say. One is, I agree completely with what Janice said, that it's not going to stay the same no matter how much you wish it would. And there's not going to be this nice big green lawn swooping up there as much as you wish there would be, because this is America and this is development, and this is so sort of to imply that, or to think, I think it's kind of wrong to get into the mindset that this which will be up on the hill, and whatever allows you to still have some green and some walls. And I think that the basic truth of the matter is that if this goes down the drain and somebody else buys the property and wants to build however many McMansions, which they're going to go through a whole process. They're going to be required to keep the stone walls. They're going to be asked to preserve or reuse the stone buildings. They're going to be asked not to change the grade, and they're going to be asked to preserve the open space in the back, and they're going to be asked what their buildings are going to look like, and all the same things are going to be asked of them. So it's not so, for all you know, I mean, as unlikely as it seems, maybe somebody who actually has of what that subdivision could look like will come and buy the property and make it look beautiful. I mean, who knows? Anything is possible. But I think the best thing I did, which sort of horrified me, and I advise everyone to do it, is Google a 90,000 square foot building and see on Google what the hell that looks like. Because it's one thing to see it staked out on the ground, but almost nobody, no offense to any of you, has the imagination to turn that stake out into a three-dimensional structure. So if you go online and Google that, you'll see these kind of buildings that have wings and stuff like that, and it's absolutely horrifying.
Chris, big one.
Okay, Neil, you're a sucker bar and Mike High. 58 West Clinton Avenue. And made a very good point about, it seems like the stone buildings and the stone walls are kind of being held hostage. Due to the topography of this property, any application is going to have to do some negotiating with the planning board, and our planning board knows what kind of things are important to us here. And any application is going to be subjected to the comprehensive plan and will also be subject to our resource protection section of our code, which this application is not. This application specifically talks about, it's not just the amendment, it's the special permit that circumvents the resource protection section of our code, and that's really, really important because they don't have to comply with that. And that's what the people of this village want. That's why we have that code. So I think we really need to continue to look at that. Now, I'm assuming that this is a new
It would have to be.
It has to be a new DIS because it's a new project. So I think what we're talking, it's a totally different project.
You mean if it were, no, they don't submit a new DEIS. But their mitigation to some of the issues raised in the DEIS would be this. The board's going to have to study it, but it won't be a new DEIS.
I mean, if it were a whole new project and it were a single-family development, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about this project. If it's a different size and a different business model completely, then the runoff is different, the impervious surfaces are different, the whole project's different, right? Or they're just going to...
No. They haven't done any of that stuff yet. They'll do those calculations. They'll re-show. But it's not a new DEIS. You asked, is it a new DEIS? No. They're dealing with different issues in the FEIS. They're dealing with less coverage or whatever. They'll have to deal with the project, but already in the existing process.
But the numbers will be modified because the project's been modified.
Of course, yes.
And then they just go into the final, there's no draft.
Well, there's always a draft final environmental impact statement, yeah.
The DIS is the draft.
No, that's the draft environmental impact statement that they prepare. Then the board, the FEIS is the board's document. Generally, the applicant prepares it, but the board makes sure that you haven't dealt with this, you haven't dealt with this, we don't agree with this, we don't agree with that. Either they revise it to the satisfaction of the board, or the board takes over the document and finishes it itself.
Okay, so just let's use IVAC as an example. Now, in the DIS, they made some representations about IVAC and what they will need or not need, and let's say traffic too. So how do they get to the final without revising their research for this new size project?
That's their reason.
Okay, okay, let me put it this way. I don't want to keep asking that question. Let me just go this way. I fear if we keep inviting them to continue to study this, we're never going to get to that place where we talked about where's the Rubicon. When have you really teased them, basically? And I feel like we're sending back to the drawing board now with this new size that we all still think, we think, is still too big. And as Ann was saying, a really great way to see the size of it is when you take 287 and go towards the Tappan Zee Bridge and just look over your shoulder before you get to Stop and Shop and look at the facility. It's only 70,000 square feet in Tarrytown. You get a really great view of it from up there, and you will see it's really large. The bulk is relevant, I believe. We were talking about the scope. I think it's absolutely disproportionate. We do have to remember, we talk about housing here. We just passed wonderful legislation, and that's great, and thank you. Affordable housing, one of the points, accessory housing, but really it's affordable is what we're trying to do, is maybe get some people in town, maybe some younger people. That was one of our thoughts, to diversify our age group of our population. This is luxury housing. These places are over $7,000. I mean, it's $125,000 a year to live there. And I really don't think that that's sort of what we are for here in Irvington. We're not here to make corporations rich and to have rich people come in here and live in luxury housing. We've been trying to do the exact opposite here. Now, one of the reasons we want to do the opposite here is because, we're a single-family community. We just have a ton of people living in the single-family houses with their children. And I know that's boring. I think we're number 2 or something on some study recently. I don't know if you guys saw it, but we're very boring. But there's a reason for that. There's a huge job market in New York City, and there are great schools here. So lots of people move here, and that's what we do. And we put down our roots, and we watch each other's children grow up. We get to know the teachers. We get to know our cops. And it's a fabulous community. This is a transient population. They come, they live here for a small amount of time, and then they go wherever they're going to go. And I think, I don't want to seem like I discriminate against the dying, because we actually are all the dying. But my point is that it's true, though. This is a large area that's going to be transient. These aren't people that are going to put down their roots in our community. They're not kids you're going to see walk down the street.
The average age is 86, so their roots aren't very deep.
Well, and there's an absolute need for these facilities. And there are facilities nearby, as we know, there's one 3 miles away, and it has vacancies, and because I've called these places because my parents are older, and way older, they're 180 between the two of them, and I called Atria, and Atria is desperate. They are hounding me. And then they heard about this project, and they're very concerned about this project. It's a whole industry out there. So anyway, my point is that I think that, and the IVAC is really a serious problem. I know, Brian, you've always been concerned about that, and it's a, I almost said a grave issue, but I don't want to say that. Yeah, but you heard Trans Carolina Business, they're bankrupt, and Empress is trying to handle their stuff. So that problem is worse than ever, and that part of DIS has got to be updated or corrected.
Yeah, well, I mean, say if they said we'll pay $1 million a year to do IVAC, it might be, you know what I mean? So there's not that I think it's going to happen, but I'm saying there could be solutions. We haven't gotten there yet. I haven't even brought up the ambulance corps issue, which is my #1 issue after SARS.
Right, I know. That's why I tried to steal your thunder with that. So, and just also you mentioned before about it, the building here is empty now, and you're right. But at least it's only a 35,000 square foot building empty now. Do we want a 90,000 square foot building empty, or 100,000? And one other mention is the setback. If their house is built, the setback, I believe it's only 2 houses that would be the regular Broadway setback, and the others will have to be behind those. So it's not like having a 90,000 behemoth monolithic wall right off of Broadway. They would be a little bit closer than this. They'd be closer than 300 feet. So those are my issues, and I really feel like we should not continue to lead these people on. It's big. David Cooper said last time he was here, he said, this is our business model. If we make it any smaller, it doesn't work for us. So let's end it. I mean, we have one yes, but we have, a couple people on the fence. I think we need to get off the fence and let them go And that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just wanted to make a comment that I keep hearing about,
Sure.
about the option of the houses, and I think that before, one of the things that gives me pause and makes me want to give a little bit more due process to the strat plan is when you look at what was proposed at the planning board for the 5 houses or 6 houses referred to as McMansions on that site. It's much more than just the 2 houses that will be, closer to Broadway, but there's a significant change in the entire grade and layout of that slope. It's no longer a gradual slope going up toward the ridge line, but so yeah, if anyone wants to get an eye opener, go back to try to go back to the planning board documents. There are probably copies at the library, and look at the grading plans for the 5 or 6 house cluster. It's astonishing. I mean, you're driving in off of Broadway through 23-foot walls on either side of the entry. It's like a luge run to get in there. So, to me, visually, that's a striking change. So, I just had to speak up now because, looking at it, the 7 house or the 5 house or whatever number the house is, cluster is not a panacea either. If it was that clearly beneficial in terms of, for me, the thing that stopped it was just looking at what kind of change has to go on in the topography itself, and what kind of grading, how that's going to change that whole area would probably be much more significant than a building that's 100 feet closer to Broadway, but you would still have a 300-foot slope of green or planted. So that's just all I'm saying. Go back and check
And all
it
the
out.
impervious surface, too.
They're not actually,
Almost 3 acres.
Mr. Flood? You remember what you want to say?
I don't know anymore. We'll talk about it. Okay, so it's probably about this time you're trying to figure out how you all get involved with this. But anyhow, from where I stand right now, as a 40-year resident of the village, this project concerns me a lot. But if this project were to be developed, okay, I think we have opened the doors to a very slippery slope of which none of us will know where it goes. None of us, okay? With all our wisdom, okay? And I was on this board here, okay, and I don't want to do this, but I just think that it's very hard for this board to be able to envision 30, 40 years down the line what the result of making a decision to move forward with this project may do to this village. I mean, I love Tarrytown, I love Dobbs Ferry, I love Hastings, but I don't want to look like them, I don't want their population, I don't want anything like that. And what I'm trying to say is, what are you talking about? As this facility fails, now maybe we have apartments up there. And I don't know, once we have apartments up there, maybe there's going to be more apartments up there. I'm not quite sure. But I'm just very, very concerned about the character and the history of this village, the culture of this village, just what it's going to look like coming into this village and leaving this village with that type of facility up there. I think we got to take a hard look. I was encouraged tonight that most of you still question the viability of this project. I took offense to Brightview's representatives last time saying that they've been here for so long, they spent so much money, and you're just hanging us out to dry. I think they've been here a very short time. I think this project's been expedited more than most projects I've ever seen here. And I'm just concerned that we've got to take a real hard look at this before we go any further, because it's going to take a very long time for this to go from one end. Whether it's successful or not, I still don't know, but I'm very afraid if it is successful, what this village will look like down the line.
Anybody else? Please.
My name is Louis Maggiotto. I'm an attorney for Kim and James Raby. In our submission to the DAS, we took the position even now that a supplemental EIS might be necessary, but now that they've changed the project the way they did, our position is that if it does go forward, if they decide to keep going, that even more so that a supplemental EIS has to be done before the FEIS. I just want to go on the record on that.
Anybody else? You'll have another chance. I'm going to give you another public comment after the reports of boards. Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mr. Gilliland? Christina?
Okay, the Dogs on Leash pilot program, again, in Matheson Park, that starts tomorrow, March 8th. It runs, I'm gonna wait.
We're all going silent.
Yeah, no, yeah.
The rec center's closed.
Okay. All right, so that program runs, starts tomorrow, it runs through April 28th. It's going to be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays, and Sundays from 7:15 to 10 a.m. in Matheson Park. Your dog must be registered with the department and must be licensed with Greenberg. Teenscape registration has started. Contact Angela Shaw for information. The FACE Committee is working on plans for a spring festival clam bake in Matheson Park on Saturday, May 14th. Actually stopped by their meeting last Wednesday, and they are trying really hard to put something cool together. May have a zip line. We're not sure yet. There are 34 adult softball teams this year. League play will start in early April. It's the highest number of teams we've had in 10 years. We still need sponsors for youth baseball and softball. Sponsor fees are $400 per team. Please contact Angela Shaw if your business is interested. Registration has started for 2016 Irvington Day Camp. Oh, I'm sorry, application forms for counselors and staff has started for day camp. RPAC is going to meet next Wednesday, March 16th at 8 p.m. at the Rec Center. The CAB committee meets tomorrow at 8 a.m. and the Woods committee meets on Thursday, March 24th. That's it.
Okay. Connie?
Very quickly, tomorrow, I'm meeting with a group to plan the Celebrate Irvington event. I'm meeting at the bank with some folks to plan that event. The Historic District Committee will meet on the 23rd, and the Theater Commission will meet on the 15th.
Excellent. Janice?
The Green Policy Task Force had a wonderful presentation at the library earlier this week regarding the feasibility study for the grant we got from Sustainable Westchester to develop alternative energy availability in case of a major power outage. I'm sorry?
Microgrid.
Microgrid. It's called a microgrid.
Right.
And this is, these would be 5 different nodes that would include Main Street, the schools, the Immaculate Conception, DPW. Each one would be plug into the regular energy system, but if there is a power outage, they simply uncouple units with power. It keeps our energy footprint down and eliminates the needs for facility upgrades. One of the best things about it, and I know Connie was very excited about this, is that they would put the wires for the microgrid underground, and they would try to coordinate with Con Edison to give them the opportunity to also put their wires underground, working out the time so that everybody could do it at the same time, which would be a significant visual impact for that. Hitachi was extremely enthusiastic. The next step is applying for a grant to develop the actual plan, and they will be working with us to go ahead with that.
Nothing.
Nothing? So I guess we have the budget. Is it a long update? Or is it kind of
as long or as short as you like.
just because someone, the mayor, drank a lot of water, so I just have to plan this a little bit.
Well,
Do you want to take a 2-minute recess, or it's up to you guys? You think it's gonna take, we have something acting too, so.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a 2-minute recess. Sorry, Rick. It is when you have a water drinking problem. Very hydrated. Now I can really focus on Brenda.
Okay, focus on Brenda.
Oh, and we're back.
It's only 9:15, it seems a lot later now.
It does seem a lot later. But you're right, it is only 9:15.
All right. What you have before you is the budget in its entirety, with all the sections are in your budget book. The next time we meet, Recreation will be presenting their, but they're already reflected in here. So, it reflects those changes, a slight change in assessed values. We also did, we back up slightly to get to this point. I also did a review of fund balance projection. And, you know, the budget, the village has really done very well for the year. It will, in the book, we'll go to the forward 2 pages of the fund balance analysis.
Where are you looking now?
Page 3. Looks like this.
We're not looking at rec budget, we're looking at...
No, we're not.
This is the overall front page.
Overall front page.
Brenda, I just have to ask you one quick question.
Yeah.
Did you give me back my folder, because it has someone's stuff in it with lots of...
That's mine. They need to switch then.
Everybody wants Janice's notes. That's what I said.
No.
Somebody's
gonna
up
say-
Do you want mine?
Nope.
You sat beside me so long.
Can't read your hand.
I set that up on purpose.
Okay, what are we looking at now?
We're looking at page 3, fund balance analysis.
Yeah,
And what a great year we've had.
We'll go here before going to where we are right now with the budget. Looking at our unassigned fund balance, we've had some strong revenues that were in excess of the original budgets. And we can project, I believe, a $250,000 surplus over the budgeted revenues. In the event you're looking, you know, you'd like an idea of what they are. We had strong sales tax, cell tower revenue with the new contracts that were signed. There was upfront monies on those. Strong building permits, extremely strong film permits. They were about $100,000 right there in film permits.
You sit in director's chairs up here.
Yeah. FEMA aid was about $47,000. It was additional money. It was through the state that we received this past year. I also took the opportunity to rebuild for those residents that have bought homes with exemptions, to rebuild those, because they lose the exemption for the part of the year until the new assessment roll comes out. So we're now rebuilding them, and that was some major ones that came off from the exempt.
I don't get
So it
that.
was about $40,000 in additional revenue.
Who got exempt from what?
People that purchase homes that are exempt from village tax, but they buy it during the year, they lose the exemption. They can't keep it. They lose it, and then we.
I don't get what. Who's exempt from village taxes?
We have an exemption.
Oh.
Veterans exemptions. Yeah, senior exemptions, various exemptions.
You mean not exemptions, but reductions?
It's an exemption. They're called exemptions on your assessments. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
forget it. Okay.
Anyway, that's what that is. I'm gonna say that these were the sources of additional revenues. Okay, that coupled with a projected surplus, basically, of items that come in under budget, another $300,000. During the year, we've had budget modifications where surplus was used of $34,000. We also used some for capital. In that sense, it brings you down to an increase in fund balance of in excess of $400,000, about 4%. We've had a mild winter, we've had some lower, fuel costs. Also, we haven't had a lot of certiorieries settled this year, So even including the ones that were approved tonight, it's only about $24,000. About 300, about 170 is certiorari's that were budgeted and did not settle. That's rolling forward, and retirement system, where the rates came in a bit lower than anticipated. So, what we're proposing to do is use some of this fund balance to offset as a one-time offset to next year's budget. Last year, on the second page, it's an illustration of our fund balance as a measurement of our expenditures. And we have your target to keep fund balance between 11 and 15% of our total budget. So they have a reserve of about 15%, something that what we would like to be. This past year, it was 15.6%, and we used some of that then and brought it down to about 15%. We used budget and other items. So even if we appropriate an additional $70,000, it would still bring our fund balance as a ratio to about 17%. So that's on the second page we're looking at. So what it's showing is that we're comfortable with appropriating, increasing it, and we're still above. And it would also still give us about $260,000, which could be used to offset capital expenses next year. And potentially, maybe, they can be discussed, we'll see where we are before we finish the year, perhaps use some of that to offset the water.
So I thought we had this difference with the tax cap thing, so that's all disappeared now?
No, not quite, no. So, back to the first page, if we use, if we increase fund balance to 170,000, and also looking at the budget, I've reduced some of the, we've done analysis of fuel, energy costs, and just compared to what we've been using this past year, some budget lines were reduced. We're right now looking at a 1.49% tax increase, and it would be keeping, on the second page is your tax cap, it would be rolling over or keeping, to use it next year, 72,000. So instead of utilizing, the total rollover was 183,000, we would not be using that entirely. We will be keeping 72,000 that could be used in subsequent or next year's budget thereafter. So it's a much better position, you know, to be in. But that's if you want to use more fund balance. And
So
then
that
the only other,
you can make the case for it because
I
it's
can make-
increased so much and we still have more than we budgeted for.
Well, it says we're gonna be at 17.28,
Yeah.
and that's
so that's,
using, right, and that's using the 107. And the items that have been identified as where we would have the surplus, there's nothing that's really gonna change between now and the end of the year, like in certiorari's or in the retirement bill is completed, the filming permits are, yeah, those revenues are done, they're captured. So that's the only other way, then just to let you know that in the energy analysis, even on heating oil, we looked at our bills this year. The budget's been reduced by 18,000 in just heating oil throughout the year.
I'm surprised the sales tax revenue was strong.
Sales tax has been strong
Just because
for,
gas prices are so low.
despite the gas, that has been, that has been a strong one. We've increased cell tower revenue only slightly, I think $5,000.
So I'm probably just asking questions that are not lining up the right numbers. So this new calculation worksheet, which has been changed a couple of times, so the bottom line is it's now showing us the $72,000 under the cap.
Under the cap.
So then how does that relate to a tax rate increase of 1.49%? Or am I mixing apples and oranges?
Well, it's increasing the taxes by $188,000.
It's tax levy is what, it's actually a tax levy cap, not a tax cap.
Oh, I see.
It's a
Gotcha,
misnomer,
gotcha,
that the
gotcha.
tax levy there
It
actually went
doesn't
up.
follow through with the same.
It's not tax, it's called a tax cap, but it's actually a tax levy cap.
Okay, so we're good with and that's what's required by law, that affects the refund checks and all of that?
Exactly
So this
right.
is really good.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, thank goodness for a girl in a shirt. And the tight budgets that we have across the board.
That's been, right, we really went through our snow budget, those couple of, the one or two major snows, but it wasn't the kind of year we had last year.
Besides movies and less snow. Add movies, decrease snow.
And the surcharges alone, that was 170,000 being, and also we reduced, let me just add something, we also, Larry and I reviewed the certs for next year, and we've reduced that budget. Because we have 170,000 that's going into the reserve on that, we felt comfortable reducing, certs as well, surcharges.
Very good.
That's about it. And then next time, so if you want to look in more detail, you have all the tabs to go through.
Sure.
Right.
But we still have some more, we have just the rec department coming in at a later date.
They're coming in on the 16th. 16th, or maybe that Monday?
It's the 21st that they're coming in.
Well, the 20th is when I have to file the tentative budget. That's going to be too late.
I think I saw his email, Christina, didn't...
What? It was originally...
16th, that's
Yeah, the
right. It's on the
16th.
16th, it's on the 16th,
So
not
the
the 7th.
16th is also the last time the board will be meeting before the tentative budget.
Right.
Okay.
I would pretty much come out of it at that point, and the next day start getting that ready. That's, you know. So I think Larry and I feel comfortable with the numbers that are in there, and
one thing I was wondering is if we wanted to even accrue a small amount, maybe $10,000 for a filming permit, just because it seems like we have, it's nice to have found money, but it's also nice to maybe start budgeting for it a little bit to offset, you know. I mean, it looks like the last couple of years, there's 95,000 this year, which is, you know, off the charts, but we had 7,514, I guess we only had 2,000 in 13, but maybe it's even $5,000, you know, something small, just to throw that into the actual budget rather than just have to have it. I mean, it's not.
Now that we're on the,
Exactly, now that
now
everybody
everybody
wants to film
knows,
here. Yeah.
right. that we're
No
like-
explosions in 16 now.
Right. All right, why don't we adjourn this part and let
I have one
Mary
question.
get her thing with us?
One quick question.
Oh, sorry. I
I talked to Larry about trying to get some money in the budget for the traffic committee. Do you know what line item?
yes, I created actually its own little department to track it, because I knew it was a major initiative of the board.
So get some.
So now where it is, if you go to police,
Oh, really?
I made it a department. It's really like part of public safety, so it falls, so I always include these departments with a department head, I put it within police. If you look at page 3 of the police budget,
Yeah, uniforms?
Traffic control.
after your exact traffic control, so,
So it's education?
so you see the equipment is 9,000, that was the budget amendment that was done at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have supplies at 5,000 for next year, and education for 2,000.
Supplies is police supplies?
No, that's the supplies for traffic control. So this is its own traffic control
Oh, you mean
department
so,
within the police jurisdiction, or under the police heading.
so, okay, good, fine, whatever, good.
So this way, it's not commingled just with other stuff, you can identify.
Yeah, I like when things aren't commingled.
That's what I think it. Yes, this way we for traffic.
Okay, now I have a personal question one more time. I never did get, our household never got a refund check. So what's this, by when should we have gotten it? I mean,
Anyone else on the board?
No, we got it.
the last time I checked a couple weeks ago, one other person hadn't gotten
You
it.
made too much money. Paid it out.
Or the value of the house?
No,
No.
Or it gets paid,
we have a small house.
it's not like it gets paid to your bank because your taxes are paid directly in your mortgage, and it goes somehow, you don't see it, but it happens.
Rich came like last week.
No, it comes as a check.
We
It's
got
an
it.
actual check to you.
Okay, I mean, some
I
things
would-
with
I would follow
mortgages
up
go.
with the,
So who do I follow up with?
I'd say with the state,
State?
Department of Taxation.
Department of Taxation?
It's always a helpful bunch, I'm sure, Mark.
Maybe he's a felon.
It is possible that I'm a felon. What is the, what's this called again? Just the rebate?
Tax cap rebate.
Tax cap rebate, okay.
It's
Well,
probably at the state website.
Yeah, you probably
what I'm really afraid of, it was somehow jammed in my mailbox, you know, like inside of a magazine or something that, or a
And you
flyer
threw it
that
out?
was chucked without. Yeah.
I kept the stub thing, Mark, I can, read the whole thing off to you, if you need an exact name.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll find
but I'm
it.
gonna try.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was being patient. It's, you gotta make, I thought it was under $500,000, which, I mean, I don't think that's a problem for our household, so.
Had to contact us.
Any other questions on the budget or anything else?
You can, there's a follow-up section on there. That looks very hopeful. It said contact us, hit a button.
Somewhere
On the website, yeah, if you don't, I think we get the runaround, we have a we could probably at least get a person's name if you strike out.
Okay.
Public comment, current action items, motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?
Hey, Brian, if you have that page, I wonder